Yes, indeed. Big Brother Bear here to give you all that you want and what you need. Today I have a treat. I interviewed Dre Baldwin. If you don't know who Dre Baldwin is, he's written 29 books, played professionally 9 years, over 2,000 master classes, and oh yeah, a Division III basketball player. So if you don't know the pecking order of collegiate basketball, let's just keep it with the NCAA, all right? Because I can go in different ways, but as far as NCAA, you have Division I, who everyone knows about. You get to see him on TV, they get drafted to the NBA. You have Division II, who some of you know about, still can go to the NBA, but very few of you know about him. Then Division III. Nobody knows Division III athletes, okay? No knock against Division III. You know how I am about Division I, II, III, NAI, JUCO, prep school. It doesn't make a difference. My thing is go to the school that's the best fit for you. But Dre went to a Division III school and doesn't get any clout at all for going to Division III school. Barely made his high school team, but went Division III, who offers no scholarships, and then from there went and played 9 years of professional basketball. If that doesn't get your attention alone, hopefully this book will. The book is called The Third Day, The Decision that separates the pros from the amateurs. Something I know that we all can learn from whatever sport, from whatever field that we are in life. This book is something that I really enjoyed, highlighted, bending pages, underlined, and anything I can do to mark some of the valuable content I got in this book, and I know you'll get a lot of it out of it as well. I'll do a more in-depth book report a little later, but as for right now, I just want to tell you more about Dre Baldwin and being able to sit down and talk to him. If I didn't ask some questions that you want me to ask, make sure you put it down in the comments, but sit down, relax. This is a great interview that you're going to get a lot of information out of, and tell me what you think about it. So without further ado, I introduce to you Dre All Day Baldwin.
First of all, I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, my background as an athlete, played Division III college where I walked on, then hustled my way into the pros, had a 9-year pro basketball career. There were times in that career where I found myself unemployed, and because of that, it became a blessing in disguise because I started focusing on building what we now call personal brand. So I started making more videos on this brand new site at the time, but now we all know it as YouTube. That's where I really first started getting known, was through putting basketball videos on YouTube. Those basketball players started asking me about mindset, so I started talking about discipline, confidence, mental toughness, taking initiative. And when I started doing that, not only were the athletes responding to the mindset stuff, but also non-athletes started finding me and saying, well, I know, Dre, you made that for the athletes, but I don't play sports. But the way you broke down that mental aspect of life, that applies to anyone. It doesn't just apply to sports. So when I stopped playing ball in 2015, I already knew I wanted to take the mindset stuff and still do that, because I knew I wouldn't be as visible to the basketball players because I wasn't going to be in the gym every day playing ball. Even though I played a lot of ball and did my best in basketball, I never considered myself a lifer when it came to basketball. I always considered myself a business person. Basketball just happened to be the business for a certain period of time. But when I was done with basketball, it was time for me to move on and do something else. I'm running my company called Work On Your Game Incorporated. And what I do here is really coach professionals. And my brand is kind of industry agnostic, as somebody described it, though. I like that phrase because it doesn't matter what industry you're in, that the stuff that I talk about is really based around strategy, accountability, mindset, and execution. Right? If someone wants personal development, they probably want to get better at all four. So that's really what I help people do. The basis being mindset.
Yeah. You glossed over it a little bit, but I think it's a huge thing, especially within my industry of working with student athletes, is you're a Division III player. And there's a stigma that comes away from being a Division III player that is not quite the same as those that are what we see on TV, the Division I players. And for you to parlay a career, not only for 9 years, but be able to craft your own journey beyond the game and implement it in your professional life, I think that's remarkable. What gave you the gumption to be able to even think that you were even qualified to do that?
Man, that's a great question. And there's so many different answers. We could have a whole conversation just on that question alone, Bill. So the first thing is, I was always into reading and writing from a very young age, even before I was playing basketball. My mother's an educator, so she had me reading and writing before I even started, kindergarten. So I was ahead of the other kids just because I basically had a teacher at the house. Mm-hmm. So I was always into reading books. And because of that, I've always been able to kind of get my own information. Now, I did what I needed to do in school, but I was always interested in getting information outside of just what school was teaching. I've always been into like the human psychology section of the bookstore. Now they have a personal development section, but they didn't even have that 20 years ago. It was just called human psychology. So I was always into that stuff. And I also, just looking around at the adults around me when I was growing up, they all worked, for the most part, they would work traditional type of jobs. The thing is, none of them ever seemed super excited about their work. And at the same time, they were always at work. And then at the same time, they always had some type of issue when it came to money, not necessarily not having it, but there was no extra. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I would ask my parents something, and my parents would say, they would say these phrases that we get asked about nowadays. Does it look like I'm made of money? Money doesn't grow on trees. I said, oh, okay. All right, that clears it up. so those things were always in my head from a youth. The thing is, I was looking at the adults around me, and I'm like, they don't look that happy. I mean, they're not sad. They're not in terrible shape, but they just don't seem that happy. So is there another way to live? So I was always wondering if there was. I wasn't consciously thinking it, but it was in the back of my mind. So when I read this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, that book really opened my mind a lot and changed a lot for me. But when I read that book and Robert just explained the concept of how you don't have to do all the work yourself and how you shouldn't not always work for money. It's not that it's bad to do it, but not always do it, so that you can free yourself up to do other things and maybe create some leverage for yourself. It's just planting a seed in my mind. And even though Robert was mostly talking about real estate in the book, the principles could apply to anything. So when I read it, I said, this is what I'm going to do.
Just the audacity to say, I'm a Division III player who wasn't consistently on the team, even in high school, but I'm going to take some of the principles that I've learned and apply it to life and be able to kind of bet on myself. I mean, from the outside looking in, you come from the basketball field, just like I come from the basketball field. I played college basketball as well. And I think people look down on those that are in Division III or Division II or so on and so forth. But you've been able to craft your own lane, man. Make your own lane and be successful at that.
I'm a competitor, Bill. I've always been a competitor. So whenever people ask me, Dre, what was the drive and the motivation and the commitment that let you, keep trying to play pro ball when you came from a Division III school, I tell them it's just the competition, it's the competitive aspect within me. And it's not even necessarily competing against a person. It's not like there's any one person who I was trying to prove anything to this whole time that I was trying to get on. Yeah. It was really just competing against the situation. Because of what you just said, that somebody would look at you like, all right, you play Division III, all right, you're playing here and you're going to do your thing here, but this isn't going anywhere when this is done.
This is it for you.
Even when I was in school at my Division III college, we had the other students will come to the games, they watch us play, but they're looking at us like, all right, y'all ain't going nowhere. Y'all going to play here, and then it's going to be over. You ain't going to the NBA. Yeah. That's what they wouldn't say that all the time directly to our faces, but I knew that was the way that they were looking at things. And then you see the players at the Division I schools because I went to school in Altoona, Pennsylvania. So around us, there were a bunch of Division I schools. You had St. Francis College, PA. You had State College, which is the main campus of Penn State, Division I school. You had Pittsburgh's only 2 hours away. The Philly school is only 3 hours away. So there was a lot of Division I and Division II schools around us. So people look at us, and even some of my own teammates, honestly, when I was in college, a lot of my teammates, they didn't see themselves as capable of measuring up to those players at that level. I personally always looked at myself as I was a very late bloomer in basketball. I didn't really feel like I was good until I was about 18, probably like the summer after graduating high school before I started college. So I knew I still had growing to do. And the players who were at the Division I and Division II, I mean, how do you get onto a D1 or D2 roster? Usually it's through scholarship. Usually it's because you showed a high level of talent and potential when you were 16, 17 years old. That's how you get a scholarship. Yeah. When I was 16, 17, I wasn't showing talent and potential because I barely started playing. So I didn't have it yet. But I knew I could compete with those guys as I matured and grew into my game. It was only maybe 2 or 3 of us on my whole campus, my Division III school. And I'm talking about everybody on campus, basketball players included, who really would look at ourselves and then look at those guys at the D1 and D2s around us and say, those guys are not above me. All right, yeah, you're playing at a D1, I'm at a D3, but if we get on the court, it's me and you. It's not D1 against D3, it's me against you. But most of the teammates that I played with in college, they didn't look at themselves like that. They looked at themselves as the position that they are. Oh, those guys are D1, those guys are D2. They didn't even want to compete, let alone were they going to try. Yeah. And the funny thing enough, me and one other guy that I played ball with in college, but only 2 guys that ever come out of my campus who ever played pro. So it's really, a lot of it is mentality. A lot of it is mindset. Do you actually believe that you are capable of doing something that most people don't think they're capable of doing? How much do you believe in yourself? it really starts with that. And when you believe in yourself, you put yourself on a certain vibration that combined with your abilities, I'm not saying that this can replace ability. If you have ability, you combine it with that vibration of actually believing you can do something, that's when you get the potential of actually doing it. But if you're missing either one, then you're going to come up short.
So you're saying not only just believing, but also following it up with action on a daily basis in pursuit of that, right?
Absolutely. And you got to have the ability to do something. Like you can try, if you have no talent, there's only so far you're going to go. That matters too.
Again, coming from that basketball culture myself, redshirted my first year, walked on. I was fortunate enough to get a full ride scholarship every year after that. But Division II, still not Division I, right? But what I think that is worth highlighting is here you have a guy from a Division III school that not very many people have heard of outside of that city limits or state limits, but has been able to transition better than a lot of these Division I athletes that we glamorize on TV as far as life after basketball. I think that needs to be highlighted in a way that people understand that there's a lot of value there, more so than just, I went to this fill in the blank big time school that they're always talking about. There's people that go to those schools and then afterwards, they lose a sense of identity, or they don't know what that next step is going to be like, and they're not able to make that transition like you made it. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah, that's a big thing is the transition, because the average athletic career for, let's say the longest average, I think, is of the four major sports is baseball. And that's like 5.5, maybe 4 or 5.5. Hockey is a little bit less than that. Football is like 3 years. Basketball is maybe 4 years. Yeah. And those are the players who make it pro. Most high school athletes don't play college, and most college athletes don't play pro. Mm-hmm. So most athletes who play a sport are finished before they turn 21. Yeah. Their career is over. They're done, at least competitively, going somewhere, like ascending. Their career is over before they turn 21. That even if you make it pro, the average career is 4 or 5 years. By age 30, most athletes are done. And by age 40, damn near everybody's done. Mm-hmm. So if you're an athlete, you're in great shape, you have hit the genetic lottery, you're probably going to live a long time, right? Mm-hmm. Barring any tragedies, you probably got another 40 years to live. What else do you bring to the table? Who are you? What do you bring to society to contribute, aside from the fact that you used to play football or that you used to play basketball? Because I'll tell you one thing that every athlete needs to understand. No matter how long your career is, I don't care if you're Kobe, or how old was Kobe when he retired? 38, 39 years old, and he was one of the greatest of all time. 2-3 years after he retired, like, if he wasn't doing anything else, nobody would really care about Kobe anymore. Like, they'd be like, oh, yeah, he used to play. Like, nobody cares about a former athlete. Mm-hmm. They want to know, what are you doing now? The fact that you used to play is cool. It's a nice credibility point on your resume. But what are you bringing to the table today? Because that old thing becomes real old real quick. Yeah. So I always had it in my mind, like, if my career doesn't happen at all right, what am I going to do? And then even as I got into my career, every time I was a free agent waiting for that call from my agent for that next contract, I'm like, all right, what if that call doesn't come? All right, what if I don't get a next contract? Then what am I going to do? Yeah. So I always had it in my mind. I had that urgency in my mind even when I was still playing.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of people will hang their hat on that, right? A lot of people live the rest of their lives talking about what happened years ago when they had it, when they were good, when they were on this team. So, to be able to transition that is powerful. But I want to hang on a word that you mentioned quite a bit in this book, and a word that, means different things to different people, and that's the word of pro or professionalism. On the cover, the decision that separates the pros from the amateurs. I just had the opportunity of working with a phenomenal company, Overtime Elite, where they employ high school student athletes. And it's a situation where the minimum base salary for a high school student athlete is $100,000. But what separates them amongst just the money, what separates them is they're actually educating them as far as how to deal with media, and education is more going to be on their path. So I think it's a remarkable company, and the potential is limitless. But I bring that up because from the definition of everyone else, they say, well, you're a professional athlete. You're getting paid. You're a professional. But just kind of digging in and double down on the things that you've highlighted here. You mentioned that being a professional is not a dollar sign necessarily, but it's the continuing getting up when you don't feel like doing something to pursue a goal beyond when the feelings have surpassed. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the dictionary definition of professional is a person who gets paid to do something as their main, salaried occupation. Right? You get paid for a job, you're a professional. You're a teacher, you're a maintenance man, you sell cars, you write books, you make money from it, and that pays your bills, and you're a professional technically. But the work on your game definition, all right, the further definition is person who shows up every time and delivers regardless of how they feel. That's really what being professional is about. When someone says to you, be a professional, they're not saying, hey, go get a job and make a full-time salary doing X. What they're saying is show up and do your job even if you don't feel like doing your job. That's the spirit of professional. The letter of the word is you make money.
Yeah.
The spirit of it is you show up every single time and do your job. And what people have to understand, Bell, is that to become a professional at what you're doing, for the most part, you need to have that professional discipline in place before anybody will be willing to pay you. There are some exceptions. For example, in the sports world, and this is, again, how the sports world can kind of warp people's minds. In the sports world, you get paid for potential. There's the only place in the world where someone will pay you a whole bunch of money before you have proven anything. Everywhere else in life, you got to prove something before they pay you. You got to prove something. They might give you a little bit, but not enough that you can relax. But you got to prove something every other place. And that's what being a professional is about, especially when you don't feel like it, because it's easy to work hard when you feel like working hard, but who feels like working hard every day? Nobody. So that's what separates the pros from the amateurs, is the fact that you showing up and working hard even on the days when you're not really feeling it. That's what separates you.
Gotcha. So I guess my question is, what advice would you give someone that's a professional in the worldly sense of the definition, meaning they're getting paid, but to still have a mentality they need to be professional as far as continuing to get up and get the job done? And I say that because there was an analogy, there was an example that was made of the easiest time to kill an alligator is after they've eaten, because they're full and they're not able to defend themselves. So I think about that as far as you get these players, whether it's overtime elite, actually NBA athletes or G League athletes that are actually getting professional grade money. How do they continue to have the mentality of, I want to press forward and be a professional within the work on your game mindset of continuing to get up, even though I'm already full?
That's a great analogy, and it's a great question. And I saw a video on Instagram. It was like maybe been on YouTube. I think it was a cheetah. They just finished chasing after a gazelle. It didn't catch it, so they was sitting down, relaxing, trying to get his energy back. And it was a lion watching the whole thing, and the lion went and killed the cheetah. Cheetahs are way faster than lions, but the cheetah couldn't run away because it didn't have any energy, right? So the lion was just waiting for the perfect time. So the same thing you just said. Perfect time to kill a cheetah right after it finished running after something that didn't catch it. So the thing with being a professional, if you're talking about at the pro level of sports, well, you can't make anybody do it. They had to want to do it, because at the pro level of sports, you can Google somebody's salary. You can see how much money they're making. If they don't want to work hard and they got a guaranteed contract for $25 million for the next 4 years, even if they do absolutely nothing and they sit the bench for the next 4 years, they walk away with $25 million before taxes. You can't make them want to work hard. You can't take their money away from them as a guaranteed contract. The differentiator between, let's say, that player who sits on the bench because they're getting paid and they don't want to work hard, and the player who's making way more than them but still outworking everybody. Let's take a guy like a Kobe or a Michael Jordan or a LeBron James. They're outworking everybody, a Stephen Curry, even though they're making more money than everybody. That's an internal thing. That's an internal decision that person makes that's bigger than the money. Because if it was all about the money, then nobody in the NBA or the NFL or the Major League Baseball will work hard. But the decision of showing up every day and working hard has to be an internal one. It has to be something inside of you that is bigger than the externalities, like how many followers you got on social media, how many people liking your posts, how many people are telling you how great you are, how much better you are than the next guy or the next girl to the left or to the right of you. It has to be about something within you that says, I'm going to show up and deliver every day because that's my job. And it has nothing to do with the money. Now, of course, the money matters. Yeah. And if you're making a lot of money, that's even better. But it has to be bigger than that. Because, again, look at the greatest achievers that we know in the sports world. They're already making a ton of money. Look at a guy like Tom Brady. Look at a Michael Jordan. Look at a Kobe. They're already making plenty of money, more money than they could ever spend. Why do they keep showing up anyway? That's what makes them special, is that they have the ability and the desire combined.
Yeah. So, once I finished reading this book, man, I told myself I have to buy multiple copies. I have to make sure that I send it to my guys over there, Overtime Elite.
Appreciate that.
And because I feel like they're going to get a lot of value out of it. One of the things that I picked up is, just off surface level, I have the book, one of the books, right in front of me, but off surface level, when you read the cover, you think the third day. So numerically, I think some people may think that, that's the whole book is to battle through things for 3 days and then make it to the promised land, if you will. But after I read it, I realized that was nowhere even close to the game. It's more of, and correct me if I'm wrong, as I read it, it sounds as though that you're saying that the third day is not necessarily a numerical, but more of a feeling. And when you actually get to that feeling, being able to make the decision to continue to go forward in spite of the feeling saying, let me rest a little bit. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. That's exactly what the third day is. Third day is more of a metaphor than it is 1, 2, 3 in a row. And third day could be a week, it could be a month. You can have a third day for a whole year. All right. And there are people listening to this who've gone through a whole year of the third day. It's just a challenging situation. You're not feeling so excited, or everything's not perfectly lined up, maybe career-wise, personal-wise, whatever you have going on, but you still have to show up and deliver. Anyone who's a parent has dealt with the third day. Nobody feels like dealing with their kids every single day, but it's a responsibility that you signed up for by having that kid. So you have to show up and do it, even though you don't always feel like it. And that is what the third day is more about, a decision. That's why the key word on that title is decision. Yeah. It's not about the moment, it's a decision.
Yeah, and then battling through that over and over and over again creates that separation that allows you to step out and be a highlight in your industry, be a highlight just within your efforts. I mean, you've done that yourself. We talk about college. I come from the student affairs at different colleges around the country, and this is no shade against any particular professor, but sometimes you get these professors that can teach you business but never own one. Can teach you things about things but never have experienced it themselves. They just kind of read it out of textbooks, and they're good at regurgitating information, and they have the degrees to back it up. There's nothing wrong with that. To each their own. But for you, that third day is something that you actually living, breathing, and walking out on a regular basis. And if you don't know that, you just kind of look at your body of work of the continuous every day of getting up and getting this stuff done. Can you talk about that as far as how you manifest the third day just in your daily living, whether that be running marathons or continue with the master class, or whether it be YouTube videos or so on and so forth? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, that's something that I had to develop that ability, because one of the things about the books that I write, especially on mindset, is that some people might get it misconstrued. If they're just coming across me now as an adult, you might think that I've always had this stuff mastered, and that's why I write books about it. But it's actually the exact opposite, because if I had it mastered my entire life, I wouldn't be qualified to write a book on it, because I couldn't speak to the person who has not yet mastered it. And then I'd just be writing books for people who already mastered it. They don't need the book, right? Because they already have it. So for me, I had challenges with being disciplined. Like in college, I didn't understand the concept of showing up every day for team practice and practicing hard with the teams. I got bored with the monotony of doing the same drills every day in front of the same people. It wasn't exciting for me. So I had to develop that skill of discipline. It hurt me when I didn't have it. And so then I had to work on it. And as I developed it, then I got good enough to explain it to other people. When it came to confidence, as a kid, I didn't always have the confidence. I used to wear these bifocal glasses, and my clothes were too small and tight back when it wasn't cool to have glasses and tight clothes. Now it's cool, but back then it wasn't cool. So because I had those challenges with confidence, I had to work through every level of confidence from 0 to 100. So now I can teach it to another person. With mental toughness, setbacks that I had just trying to make it in basketball, and seeing a lot of my peers who had the same challenges give up, and me continuing to go. Because I faced those challenges, it qualified me to talk on it. And it's the same thing with the third day. When it came to all three of those, the confidence, the mental toughness, and the discipline, the third day is kind of a combination of all of those, and then the initiative to do something about it. So it's kind of a combination of all four of those pillars that are working on your game philosophy when it comes to mindset, is that I had to work through those third days as an athlete in college when I was on the team, but then I wasn't getting the kind of playing time that I should have got, simply because the coaches didn't like the fact that I didn't always work hard in practice. The third day of, all right, how do I keep myself going and keep believing that I can do something with basketball after I graduated? And I'm working at Foot Locker, I'm working at Ballet Total Fitness selling memberships, and there was nothing in my reality that said I was going to make it in basketball. I had no prospects. There was nobody calling me, checking on me, nobody saying, Dre, keep your head up, you're going to make it. Nobody was saying that. I had to run on my own energy. That whole year was the third day for me before I got my opportunity to play. So that third day happened over and over again in my life. And we all have these situations. The thing is, there just wasn't a name for it. I just put a name to it, called it the third day, and I create a whole framework around it. So now everybody can identify it in one way, and we're all talking about the same thing when we say third day, at least in this sense. So that's where it came from.
So as far as the third day as being a student athlete in college, what are some things, I mean, you've just rounded the second day and you're getting into that third day of not wanting to do it. You've already surpassed the honeymoon stage of you being on campus, the honeymoon stage. If there's gorgeous girls here, the honeymoon stage, if I can just come and go when I want. And now you're in that third day.
Right.
What are some things that you feel like that you can grab onto to help power you through the third day as a student athlete in the collegiate ranks, just trying to get through it?
Man, well, you got on the court and you have off the court, or in your sport and outside of the sport. So as far as on the sport side of things, it's that player needs to understand that showing up every day and practicing, that's going to be the challenge. The games are usually not hard for athletes. I mean, as long as you like playing your sport, it's pretty easy to be excited for the game, at least if you're playing in the games. Now, the practices, those are the parts that can be more challenging because you're going to be practicing a lot more than you did in high school. Yeah. The players you're playing with and against are a lot better, and you're going to be challenged more by your coaches. Your coaches are going to push you more in college than they push you in high school because it's just a higher level. There's more at stake, and everyone is at a higher level. Everything's higher level, so it's going to be more asked of you. So I think as an athlete, one of the biggest things is just developing that discipline to practice hard every single day. Yeah. Now, as far as outside of the sport, first of all, if you're going to play collegiate sports in the United States of America, you got to understand the system. The system says you go to college, you must be a full-time student, taking a full-time course load, and you must have a certain GPA in order to be eligible to play. Those are the rules. Now, whether you agree with them or not doesn't matter. What matters is that they're the rules. So if you want to be eligible, you have to go to class and you have to pass those classes at a certain level in order to play. Now, if you don't do that, you can't play. Simple, black and white. Now, everyone understands that. A good thing for athletes now is that you can make money off your name, image, and likeness. So now you can have some money in your pocket in addition to your scholarship stipend. So now you don't have that complaint anymore. And at the same time, when you're a student athlete, especially with a scholarship, and you can tell me about this because you have the experience, but colleges put entire processes and systems around the athletes to help you be eligible. They give you study halls. They give you tutors. They will do whatever they got to do to make sure, just for the athletes. I went to Penn State, so I knew a whole lot of athletes at the main campus of State College, D1 athletes. I knew people on the basketball team, the football team, both basketball teams, the football teams, track athletes at that level playing in the Big Ten. They have entire ecosystems of staff that work at the university whose only job is to help athletes stay eligible. That's all they do. So if you become ineligible as an athlete at a big time D1 school or as a scholarship athlete, even at a D2, it's probably because something that you did or something that you didn't do, because they have everything in place to help you be successful. They got the tutors, they got the study halls, anything that you need. You come to the biggest football player on the football team comes to the coach and says, "Hey, coach, I'm having some issues in this class." All right, there's 3 or 4 people that will help you make sure you don't have issues in that class. And especially for young male athletes. I said this in one of my episodes of my show, as a matter of fact. You're a young male athlete on a college campus, even at a Division III school, especially in a sport like football or basketball. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows you're on the football or the basketball team. And there are plenty of young ladies in that class who are doing great in the class that you're failing at, who will gladly become your study buddy and help you pass that class so they can help out somebody on the football or the basketball team be successful. So there are so many resources available for you to be successful. There is no excuse. And one other thing, outside of academically, just outside of sports and outside of academics, as a young male, trying to make it happen in your sport at college, you have a lot of free reign. You have much more freedom than you have when you are back at home living under the roof of a parent. Is that you just got to make sure you don't make any dumb decisions. That not every decision you make is going to be super smart, but you just got to make sure you don't do anything dumb. Don't do anything that gets you on the wrong side of the law, and don't do anything that you cannot extricate yourself from, in less than 18 years, if you understand what I'm saying. So these are just the smart decisions that athletes have to make.
Okay. There's some people that are motivational, both hustlers and junkies, in the sense of like they need their next fix of that, and that is a situation where it almost paralyzed them to move forward with any progress. So you talk about more of not having motivation being your crutch of getting over that hump when you hit that third day, but more having anchors. Can you talk to us a little bit about anchors and why they're so important as far as, being able to power through that day, being able to reach your goal?
Yeah, and that was the word that was escaping me a moment ago, the anchors. And that's the thing that is really going to pull you through other than motivation. Because a lot of people, they go looking for motivation when they're not really feeling like doing their thing. I get text messages all the time. People text me and say, well, Dre, I want to play ball. Or I used to get a ton of comments from basketball players like, Dre, I really want to make it in ball, but I got cut from the high school team, or I'm on the team, but I'm not getting any playing time, or I'm practicing, I'm not getting better. I don't feel motivated. Can you give me some things to motivate me? And I always tell them, no, I'm not giving you anything to motivate you, because the problem with me motivating somebody is that what are you going to do when I'm not around to motivate you next time? Because next week you're going to have this problem all over
Blame
again.
it on you.
Or
Dre's
next time
not
you
around.
have a bad game. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the next time you have a bad game, you're going to need to get motivated again. But I'm not always going to be around to motivate you. So if you can't get yourself going, then you got a problem. And maybe you just chose the wrong thing to do with your life. Right? Nobody has to be an athlete. And the other thing is, even if you do decide to keep going as an athlete, motivation is not the thing that you want, because motivation comes and goes. What you need is some type of internal drive. You need an anchor, something that is strong enough to pull you through the days that you don't really feel like it, that may provide some motivation, but is bigger than motivation. So you look at, like you asked earlier, about a Michael Jordan or a Kobe or a Stephen Curry or a Tom Brady. Do these guys have days when they don't really feel like practicing? Absolutely. Do they have days they probably have games they're not really that excited for the game, because they might be playing against a terrible team. There's nothing about this game that really excites them. The team's probably going to win even if they sleepwalk through the game. How do they show up and give their best effort anyway? That requires the anchor. There has to be something bigger than that. So if you look at a guy like, let's say a guy like Michael Jordan, we all know, because we've seen documentaries and stuff about Mike, that his thing was just competition. He just loved to compete. He's loved to beat everybody for no reason whatsoever. He just wanted to beat people at basketball. And so if he was playing against a terrible team, he would just manufacture a reason to just beat up on his team just so he could prove that he could. That was just his thing. You look at a guy like Kobe Bryant, well, he was chasing Michael Jordan. So he didn't actually catch up to him, but he was chasing him. So his thing was, all right, this is what Mike did. I got to live up to that. So he already had a standard to chase. That was his anchor. There has to be something stronger than just motivation for him. So that's the thing that everybody has to figure out. You combine that with ability, then that's when you get magic.
Yeah. When we start talking about how you see yourself, the student athlete, the way you see yourself may be a sharp contrast of how everyone else sees you. And they're speaking these things on you. So you're in a position where, like, maybe it'd be a professor, maybe it'd be someone from your old neighborhood that said that you would never go to college, or maybe it'd be your coach that's saying, hey, Dre, you listen, when you shoot, it's like you're shooting for the other team because you don't help us out at all. So now you get that negative feedback from them. How do you combat that negative feedback that you're hearing on a regular basis and still having a positive view of yourself that's actually going to be productive in the long run?
That's a great question, and that requires a high level of self-awareness and mental toughness. Mental toughness, because sometimes when someone's offering you some negative feedback, or what some people might call constructive criticism, depending on how they want to verbiage it, they might be telling you something that you actually need to know. They might be telling you something that you need to hear. Someone tells you that when you shoot a three-pointer, you're helping another team because you're not making any of your three-pointers. Well, we can just look at the stats. Is that true or is it not? Because if you're making 20% of your threes, you are helping another team every time you shoot. Mm-hmm. So maybe you either need to stop shooting them or work on making threes before you shoot them in a game and hurt the team. So there's a level of mental toughness and self-awareness, actually a combination of both, that you have to be able to take constructive criticism and ask yourself, is this criticism legit? Is there something correct and accurate within this criticism? And especially in the sports world, I think is very important, and especially for young men and especially young black men, that when you are receiving criticism from a coach, usually a male adult figure in your life, they are telling you something about you in a critical way that might not be so nice. It may be emotionally charged. They might use some language that you're not used to hearing. Do you have the self-awareness, first of all, to ask yourself if what they're saying is actually true? Do you have the discipline to ask yourself, okay, they might have said something a little bit snarky to me, but is there some truth inside of that snark? Can I separate what they're literally trying to tell me from the way they said it? That requires a level of discipline. Do you have the confidence to look at it and say, okay, all right, what the coach said is actually right because I'm shooting 20% on threes. I am killing the team every time I shoot. And then do you have the self-awareness to say, okay, I'm going to do something about this criticism so that this criticism is no longer true. And the reason that I say young black males, it matters so much because males, we have ego. We have testosterone. We all have an ego. And a lot of young black men, if you grow up without a proper adult figure in your life who's giving you a positive example of a man, then you go to college and you have a coach. This is the first time in your life you had a man talking to you like that. You might react in a negative way, in a way that ends up destroying your opportunity to make it in sports when you have plenty of talent. And the thing that ends up costing you your opportunity is your lack of discipline, your lack of mental toughness, your lack of self-awareness, because you didn't have an adult modeling for you the right way to deal with authority. So this is kind of a sidebar from what you actually asked, but I think it's a really important thing for young men to be coachable. And if you're not coachable, you'll never make it in sports because there's no pro athlete who doesn't have a coach.
All right, so Dre, thank you so much for just carving out time to speak with us today about the third day. I got a lot of value out of this book. I want to make sure that the people down at Overtime Elite get a copy of this book, so everybody on their team will get a copy. And I really just feel like this interview just gave me so much more encouragement and so much more inspiration moving forward as far as how I can make a big splash in the industry of student athlete development. I also feel that, student athletes in general are going to be able to get a lot from this, and they should definitely pick up this book as soon as possible and read it 2 and 3 times. I know I'm on my second time of reading it because there's just so much information in it that, it's rich in content that sometimes you read it one time and you read it again and you get even more content. So thank you for that. Thank you for just living out this thing. There's a lot of people that can tell you how to do things, but they've never done it, and they're making a living off that. And for you to be here on a daily basis with your daily contributions, I can say from experience that it's definitely shaped me in a positive way. So I definitely want to thank you for that. Before we go, I want to go ahead and allow you to lead us out of here. Have the last word on any final words that you want to give to whether it be college student athletes, whether it be high school student athletes, whether it be the good folks over at Overtime Elite, whether it be individuals that want to be student athletes. What are some things that you would leave for them today?
Well, Bill, I definitely appreciate you appreciating me, and I appreciate you sharing your platform with me and inviting me on here to talk to you and supporting the book, reading it, and us having this conversation about it. Because I wrote that book to help impact people. So I'm glad to hear it made an impact on you and see the potential impact it can make on other people, including your listeners. So as far as what I would leave the audience with, I'll tell you, I send out daily motivation texts every day. I'll tell you the text that I sent out just today when we're recording this. It says, when you don't have resources, depend on resourcefulness. And that one right there, that's what I'll tell everybody out there who's listening, is that when you don't have the resource, sometimes a resource could be you don't have the energy. Sometimes you're not feeling excited. Sometimes things are not popping off the way that you want them to pop off. Sometimes you might not have connections. You might not have money. You might not know the right person. You might not be in the right location, but there's a goal that you want to reach. At that point, it doesn't mean that you can't reach the goal. It means you need to get resourceful. In other words, figure out how can you make maximum use and get maximum return on investment from the resources that you do have. How can you work with what you've got? Not complain about what you don't have, but work with what you do have. And the people who are best at doing that are those who make things happen in life. It is not the people with the most resources, it's the people who make the most of their resources. And that is what the third day is all about, because there will be days when that resource of excitement, that resource of novelty, that resource of that new car smell, metaphorically speaking, is not there. What are you doing that day? Because the best performers, the Michael Jordans out there, the Bill Gates out there, the Oprah Winfrey's out there, those people find a way to deliver their best effort every single day. You wouldn't even know if they're having a bad day by the way they perform. I guarantee you they have bad days, but you wouldn't know which day it was, because every single time they deliver at the same high level, and that's the reason they became great. Not because of their talent, not because of their resources, not because of their money. They became all of those things and got all of those things because they made the decision beforehand. They became the type of person who will show up every single day and deliver. So I say it again, when you don't have resources, depend on resourcefulness. And I'll give you my text number, so anybody who wants to get my daily motivation text, they can just text me. They can get that every day. And there's a lot more where that came from. So that book that you just talked about is this book right here. It's called The Third Day, The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. I will give anyone who is listening to this a free copy of this book. Yes, a physical copy of the book. All you had to do is cover the shipping. Just go to Third Day Book, spelled out, thirddaybook.com. Just cover the shipping, and I will send this book to you worldwide, anywhere that you live. And whatever you do, graduate at the top of your class. Hoop Rowdy.